Is it true, exile, what they say? That you weren't born here in Rayclast, but rather you washed up on our shores no better than the driftwood from the slaver's ship that brought you here? You see, I too share your pain and your loss, your thirst for vengeance. For I too know the sound the waves make against rotting oak, the putrid smell of bloating flesh, and I swear one day, if I could realize even a sliver of your power, I would use it to free all of Rayclast from the tyranny, from its demons, its false prophets, from every one or thing that says they are the one true God. A freedom my family never got. And if one day, like you, I could ascend, I swear that I will cleanse the filth, the blight from this place that I now call my home. But for now I'll sit back and watch, and learn from your triumphs and your failures, from every guardian you slay, to all the land you conquer. And one day like you, I will take my revenge. You will see it, and they will reap it.
What's up everybody, it's Victon, here with my first 3.17 League Starter build guide, and we have got my personal favorite up first, the Skeleton Mage Necromancer. Before we even get going, I hope you guys enjoyed that first little intro. I had a great time making it, and I hope it got you hyped for some awesome Path of Exile coming this league. With all the new content coming our way, I personally am pretty hyped. And guess what guys, the best news of all, we survived the patch notes. I was actually blown away. I thought surely they would nerf us, given that, at least in my opinion, Skele mages are the best minion build at the moment, and if built right are unkillable and can pump out mega damage. On top of being the best in-game farming minion build, they are also the top 1 to 2 minion builds that I would say are the best for league starting. Out of all my League starters I have planned for you guys, this is by far the build that has the most damage output and pretty much has equal survivability as all the others as well. Honestly, the only reason you should play something else is if you've already done Skeleton Mages a gajillion times and want to try something different. But if you like spending under 2 exalts to get you all the way to and through the in-game bosses, then this build is for you. It's hardcore viable as well because of how tanky it is, so even us nubs in softcore can enjoy the benefits of never dying, basically without even trying. It's even solo self-found viable, which is also pretty cool. This build is one of the few out there where you can seriously say it does it all, from being a fast mapper to being a strong boss killer, and even on a budget. It's honestly crazy they didn't nerf this build. No one tell GGG, we gotta keep this on the down low and dodge all those nerf bats. Now, I played a ton of Skeleton Mages last league, like a ton. I tried many different versions of this build and finally decided on what I think is the best version of the build. This will of course be the league start version of that build, and another cool thing that I've actually done for you guys this league is we are going back to our roots. We're going to have some really high quality in-depth guides for you guys for these league starters. So don't click around the video just yet. I want to go over what this build guide actually has to offer so you can get a good idea of everything that is in this guide. Now, I of course have the POB for you guys, but this time around I've also included a full written leveling guide for your gyms, all nice and color coded in the notes section, so check that out if you're interested. I'm actually including 2 leveling POBs for this guide specifically. We're going to have the melee skeletons, which is what you're actually going to be using until you get the Dead Reckoning Jewel, at which point you're going to switch over to the Skeleton Mage POB. From there, we're going to go over the gym links, and I've got 1-page cheat sheets like I used to have for both the melee and mage versions of the build, so you guys can leave it up on a side screen as a cheat sheet while you go through the acts. It's very useful and something I actually use for myself when I'm leveling. I've also updated my leveling loot filter specifically for this build, so you guys can check out that if you want. It's a filter that's going to help you out with easily finding the right color sockets for your build as you level. I've also included in the loot filter some things for our solo self-found friends to help them out identifying crafting bases, and all the uniques that we have in this build are also highlighted a different color as well, so you guys don't miss any of those if they do drop. After the loot filter, we're going to be talking about gear and upgrade paths that you're going to take while you gear out your character from league start situation all the way to the in-game version of the build. Lastly, like usual, I do have a spreadsheet of all the trade links that you're going to need for every single item in the build, from league start items all the way to your in-game items. I've even gone back and saved all of the trade searches for you guys in Better POE Trading folder, which is a fantastic app extension that saves trade searches for you. All in all, this guide has been designed to give you guys all the information you need in a hopefully compact format to where you can know how to build your character, gear it out, and then play it to its fullest potential. It's a one-stop shop for sure, and I really hope it helped you guys out. Lastly, before we dive into the path of building, I just wanted to mention that I will be streaming on Twitch this week, so if you ever have any questions, feel free to come on over there and ask away. If you're interested in supporting the channel, I also have a Patreon link below, which is going to get you access to my Discord community, where I actually do personal build reviews for folks all the time. And of course, in general, we have an awesome community in there with tons of folks ready to chat about builds and the game in general. But enough of that, let's hop straight into the POB. Alright, so here we are in the Melee Skeleton build POB first, because this is what you're actually going to be wanting to use until you have purchased or found the Dead Reckoning Jewel, which is going to turn your skeletons into skeleton mages. Luckily for us though, this melee version of the build also dishes out great damage and is a solid league starter as well. Now, for time's sake, I won't go over the full tree here in too much in depth, but I will mention a few highlights so you guys can know how to get around the POB and also the general idea behind the build. So first and foremost, like always, I have down here the leveling tree all the way from level 1 up to level 95, at which point you're going to be more into the in-game version of the build. Going through this will show you exactly where to put your points as you level up, and exactly what order to level your ascendancy points as well. Now for the build itself, I've opted for a tanky character that still does great damage. We're actually getting 75-74 feels bad block chance, which is actually crazy strong. We even get life gained on block without needing a fancy shield by picking up some choice nodes on the tree, which is also really strong for early leveling. That mixed with 30k armor and max chaos resistance with decent life regen as well, we're actually really tanky. And with complete poo-poo gear, you're sitting at 5.5k life at level 95, which is also pretty solid. Damage-wise, we're in the melee version here, like I said, and we're going to be doing 2 million base DPS. That's without Vol Skeles popped, and when it is popped, you jump up to 2.8 million. And in the Skele Mage version of the build, we're going to jump up to some big boy damage of 3 million base DPS and 5 million when your Vol Skeles are popped. And remember that Vol Skeles is up pretty much your whole map, and even some boss fights, it can be up quite a bit of the fight as well, so pretty solid damage for sure. And for our ascendancies, we're going to be going with Mindless Aggression first, Unnatural Strength second, Commander of Darkness third, and Mistress of Sacrifice fourth. You of course have your skills here, and your items are going to be here. And remember, once you get that Dead Reckoning Jewel, hop on over to the Skele Mage POB. Both of those, of course, are going to be linked in the description below, and start going with that one. The tree is actually the same, but the gems are, of course, going to be different. If you follow the gem leveling guide in the notes of the POB, or on this guide, you're going to be able to make sure you have all the right gems for both the melee and mage versions of the build as you level up, which is quite important. Alright, so the last thing here we'll do in the POB is go over the configuration and defense calcs. For the DPS config, we got power and frenzy charges checked, but we're only going to have 2 of those checked, because after lots of testing last league, your Skeles will typically have 2 charges, but very rarely will actually have that 3rd charge, so we shouldn't be putting that 3rd charge there to be accurate. Other than that, we do have Feeding Frenzy active always, which is of course going to be up all of the time. We have the enemy is chilled because we do not use Ellie Focus in this build. And then the enemy is a boss is no. Now that's because the body armor that we're going to be using makes all enemies have 0 elemental resistances, which is effectively what we're doing here, checking that as no. And that's it. So the DPS numbers are very accurate here. Moving on to the defense config. We're actually looking really good here for a league starter. We're sitting at 410k physical damage effective HP, 200k for lightning, fire, and chaos damage, and 250k for cold damage effective HP. For the very low cost of this build, guys, that is super strong. Which is why I really like this build, because you not only get great damage, but you're also super tanky, and I like not dying, even though I'm playing in softcore. Alright, cool. So moving on to the gem links here. We have our first links for Act 1 and Act 2. We're actually going to be leveling up with Summon Raging Spirits, Flame Totem, and Zombies. This is a crazy strong combo until you get to around Act 3 or 4 when you're going to get your first couple 4 links. At that point, you can go ahead and switch on over to Zombies on a 4 link and Skeletons on a second 4 link. Just keep in mind here that you won't be using that Pride until you get the Determination Mana Efficiency Mastery around level 56 or so. Until then, just use Tempest Shield, Determination, and Dread Banner. And here is your final links for the Melee Skeleton version. And again, until you get that Dead Reckoning Jewel, this is what we will be using. At which point, you can go ahead and swap on over to the new gem setup, which is this. Keep in mind that you should be leveling up these gems as you're doing the melee version, just so that you can have them on the max level. And those are going to be like Pierce, Volley, Hypothermia, etc. in your offhand, again, until you get that Dead Reckoning Jewel. Another tip here is that anytime you get a Vol Orb while you're leveling up, go ahead and throw that on a Summon Skeletons in hopes that you get a Vol Summon Skeletons, because we eventually do want to use Vol Summon Skeletons. It's going to add a ton of DPS, especially early on in the league. Alright, perfect. So moving on to the custom loot filter. Okay, so here we are on my profile where I have all of my item filters that are public for you guys. I will of course leave this link in the description of the video. You're going to want to go to that link and then you can see all of the filters that I have. Now for this build specifically, we're going to be coming all the way down here to Skele, Leveling, Trade, and Solo Self-Found. So what you're going to do is you're going to click this button right here. For me it says followers, but for you it will say follow. So you're going to click that and then it'll say following. So what that does is it's going to automatically link that to your Path of Exile. Just make sure, of course, that you are logged in to the website when you do that. Now, to get it actually set up in game, you're going to go to Options, you're going to go over to Game, and then you're going to come to List of Item Filters. Now, for example, if I had my normal one as, say, in-game farming, and I dropped any of these items, they wouldn't show up, right? So make sure that you actually have the right filter enabled by going to Options, and then you're going to go down here to the correct one, which in this case is, again, Skele, Leveling, Trade, and Solo Self-Found. Click Save, and there you go. So we're going to go show you a couple examples of basically what I've set up for you guys, and you can kind of get an idea of how to use this as you're leveling. So super cool. It's going to give you, for example, a blue beam here on an item that is a 3-linked blue item. Now this is very useful in the beginning stages of the game when you have your first 3-link. So for example, if you see a blue beam, that means definitely pick that up. It has the right colors for your build at that moment in time. Same thing with this one, it's going to be a blue, blue, red, and it's going to give you the red beam. Moving over to our first 4-link that we get, it's going to be a little bit bigger, the actual, thing here that says the item itself, and it's going to give again that blue beam. Now the same thing goes for this one, it's going to be the red beam. Okay, perfect. Now there's also a couple things that I have done for all your solo self-found friends out there, and also for in general just when you're doing the league start situation as well. This is pretty helpful. So now if you guys don't know, there is a crafting recipe to get +1 to minion helmets. In order to do that, you absolutely need a bone spirit shield. So when you get that bone spirit shield in the game, you want to actually look out for these yellow beams, and of course it's going to be colored yellow as well. So if you see that, that is going to be a crafting item, or it is going to be an item that you might want to chance for one of our in-game items. So this one is a Necromancer Silks. This is again the yellow beam. That is again going to be for either crafting or chancing, and the reason we might want to chance a Necromancer Silks is to get Fleshcrafter. Perfect. Now, for example, the Fleshcrafter itself, again for you solo self-found folks, and honestly in general, I think this is pretty cool to add to the build. Anytime you drop a item that is a unique that you will be using in the build, it'll actually show up as a different color. It'll be red like this, and that means it's not always going to be the exact item that you need. For example, a Necromancer Silks could either be Fleshcrafter, or it could be that other Spectre chest that I can't remember, Vigor Mortis, I think that's what it's called. So it could be one of those two, but it definitely means check it just to make sure that it could be or might not be the exact item that you need. Same thing goes for the most important one, the Cobalt Jewel. This is a Dead Reckoning Jewel. There you go. So if you see a unique Cobalt Jewel drop, definitely at least look at it and see if it's a Dead Reckoning. If it's not, then leave it on the ground. Do whatever you want to do with it. Same thing with the Cobalt Jewel for chancing. If you do want to chance the Cobalt Jewels to try and get a Dead Reckoning, there you go. It is that yellow beam. Perfect. And that is the leveling loot filter. I hope this helps y'all out with your leveling experience. I actually use this myself when I do my leveling for this build, so hopefully it helps you guys out. Alright, now with the loot filter out of the way, let's try and blast through these items. First, of course, is Dead Reckoning, which the whole build is based around. It turns your skeletons into skeleton mages, which have much better clear speed in maps and can scale single target damage much higher as well, so overall just way better. Now, I do expect a lot of people to be doing Skele mages this league, and when that happens the first couple of days, the jewel does go for around 40 to 50 C, so a lot more than it usually is, but after the first couple of days, it's going to drop down significantly to about 5 to 10 chaos and stable out there. So just note that until you get that, it is totally fine to use the melee version of this build, all will be good. Alright, next is our wand. We're actually going for a +1 to all spell gems wand. This is going to get us a ton of extra damage and actual survivability as well for our minions, because it's giving them a lot of extra life. So overall, just a great cheap choice of item here. Make sure that you do leave an open suffix so that you can craft on there the trigger socketed spells when you use a skill. This is very important for automating several of our skills and makes your life so much easier. Next, we have our shield, the Lionized Remorse. The shield is a great cheap choice with a ton of life, high armor, and block chance. Of course, you could also go with a rare with just life and resistances if you really want, if you can't find that, for example, in solo self-found. Keep in mind that later on, your in-game shield will actually have these base stats, so something to work towards. Awaken or Orbing together 30% mana reservation efficiency with 3 to 5% life gained when you block, and of course you're going to divide that up to 5%. This actually gives us a crazy amount of survivability. Since we're max block, we're actually recovering a ton of life consistently while blocking. It also allows us to squeeze in another aura, which is going to be Aspect of the Spider. For our helmet, we're going to go with an Elder helmet and slam some bound fossils on there yourself. Just go ahead and craft it yourself, and we're going to aim for +2 to minion gem levels. We're going to go with some life and 1 resistance on there, as well as hopefully an open prefix so that you can craft on there +1 to max skeletons. Now that is pretty important, so definitely try and get that open prefix. For your body armor, we're actually going to have the same armor for the whole time, from your League Start version all the way up to your maxed build. we're going to be going with Fleshcrafter for those big boy damages. Like I mentioned earlier, it takes enemies' resistances down to 0. So just keep in mind we actually can't go below 0 though, so there's no point of putting any elemental penetration on there with your minions, for example like with curses. It's actually not going to do anything. Ideally, your in-game Fleshcrafter would be corrupted for +1 gem levels or +2 to duration gems. Moving on to our gloves, we have life, dex, and 2 resistances with an open prefix to craft on minion damage. And remember to try to get these items on an armor base if you can. For our boots, we're going to go with super cheap Alberon's Warpath even in the in-game version of the build. Pretty decent stats, and the +1 to maximum skeletons is going to give us a lot of extra damage. For our amulet, we're going to get one with dex and int as the base, or at least dex on the base if you can, and ideally also we're going to get one with life, 1 res, and also +1 to maximum skeletons on it, so make sure it is an elder, and hopefully also an open suffix to craft on resistances plus chaos resistance. For your amulet anoint, we're going to want to anoint Testudo, which is super cheap at clear, brown, and black, and it's going to give us 5% block chance and also 30 life gained when you block, which is super strong. Great enchant that you can get early on, so I definitely suggest getting it on your amulet as soon as you can. Moving on to our first ring here, we ideally want to get an unset ring, but if you can't get it on an unset ring, honestly, that is just fine. We're going to go with a good amount of dex here, so we do need to get that dex because we're going to be using it on for gems for like, hypothermia and sniper's mark, and if we don't have that dex here, it's pretty rough and you're not going to be able to level this up, so pretty important we get some dex here. We also have a bit of life here with 1 resistance and then crafted on resistance and chaos resistance. Keep in mind that if you are getting enough chaos resist on other pieces of your gear and you are max chaos res already, I'd suggest going with +1 to minimum endurance charge on the craft there instead. For our second ring, we're actually going to go with an amethyst ring for some juicy chaos resistance. That's going to help us reach that maximum chaos res a lot easier. We're going to get a bit of life, 1 resistance, and crafted res plus chaos res again. As you guys can tell here, these items are very basic and have pretty low rolls, so pretty manageable even in a league start scenario. Now for the belt, again, try and get a Stygian Vise, but if you can't, that's totally fine. But we're going to go with one that has life, 2 resistances, and we're going to craft on their resistance and chaos resistance. You guys might be noticing a pattern here. It's actually pretty straightforward and get you guys that easy all res and chaos res cap. Now for your medium cluster jewel, I'd say this is definitely required. Good news is it's very cheap. Buy a 4 or 5 pass of medium cluster jewel and roll blessed rebirth on there yourself with alteration orbs. This is going to give you guys your minions cannot be damaged for 4 seconds after being summoned. If you don't have this, your minions will absolutely die in boss fights. Getting this makes it easy mode. Eventually upgrade that cluster to have both blessed rebirth and also renewal for even more damage. And for your large cluster, when you can fit that into your build, we're going to get Call to the Slaughter and renewal on an 8 or 9 passive cluster. We do have one unique jewel here called Anatomical Knowledge, which is a great jewel and it's going to be very cheap, and it's going to give you actually a couple hundred life, so not too bad. Make sure though that you socket it exactly where I have it in the POB to get the maximum value of that life. Moving on to our flasks here, we do have a Rumi's Concoction for armor and block chats. We also have a Taste of Hate for fantastic defenses. And for the last flask here, we're going to get one with Enduring Eternal Mana Flask, and ideally of the Mage for reduced mana cost. But most importantly, there is the Enduring Eternal Mana Flask. This helps us sustain our skeleton's casting so mana isn't a problem. Then we're going to get a Basalt Flask with extra armor, and get the enchant on here that is used when your charges reach full to automate that flask. Then lastly, we're going to get a Quicksilver Flask with reduced cursed effect on us. With that flask and the nose on the tree, we're actually at 90% reduced curse effect on us, which is a nice extra layer of defense. And like the other flask, we're going to want the same enchant that has used when charges reach full, again to automate that flask. And that is it for our items, but before we move on to the next section, here's a few tips for our solo self-found friends. Again, remember that the custom filter has special colors for all items you want a chance to get your Fleshcrafter, Alberon's Warpath boots, and definitely keep an eye out for the Elder Amulets with Dex on their base to roll for that +1 Skeles, and then keep an eye out for Shaper and Hunter shields, ideally with life bases and armor to roll for your endgame shield. The filter also highlights all unique Cobalt jewels, so you can make sure to check all of those to see if you get a Dead Reckoning. Luckily, this build doesn't have anything too crazy and can absolutely be done on solo self-found, and a ton of people say that they did it last league and had a blast. Alright, moving on to the trade links. First, we have our spreadsheet. I've got my PoE profile linked up here if you guys ever want to check it out and check out what current gear I am rocking in my build. Next, we of course do kill all the bandits for the skill points, and the bad map mods that we're going to be looking out to avoid are Elemental Reflect. Those will definitely kill your mages, so reroll that one. For our major pantheon, we're going to go with the Brine King, and we're going to get Cannot Be Frozen by capturing the corresponding boss in a vial. And for minor pantheons, we will be using Aberrath and Cannot Be Affected by Burning Ground as the minor there. That covers us with Freeze, and then with Tempest Shield, we're also going to be Shock Immune. And with that Aberrath, that's mostly going to cover us for Ignite and Burning Ground as well, so pretty much all elemental ambits we're not going to either be taking at all, or it's going to be doing very little to us. Also have a link to my corresponding Animate Guardian gear guide here, and then of course we have the link to the better POE trading link, which we're going to go over here shortly. Now the way I've set this up is it's got the links to every single item that you're going to want for this build, ranging from League Start over here on the left side all the way up to the medium, and then up to the in-game versions of each items. Alright, so that is the spreadsheet, which a lot of you people do like, but I personally prefer the better POE trading app extension. And you can use this in Chrome, or like I have, Opera GX, and I'm going to show you guys how to actually get it real quick, and also show you guys how to use it. So first, go to the link in the description, and when you get there, we're going to go ahead and click download up here, and then we're going to add it to your extension of your browser. Enable it if it asks you to do so, and then we're going to go back to our regular POE Trade website. Here you're going to see a new tab over here on the right side of the screen, and you can actually create folders by clicking here. And if you make your own, or you can use mine, a folder is going to look like this. Basically, it stores all your trade searches in one easy spot directly on the POE Trade website, so no messing around with Google Docs. Just click the trade link and it takes you right there. Super useful, and I personally use this method when I play the game. Now, to import my Skele Mage folder that I have right here, you're going to want to go ahead and click Import Folder. Then we're going to go over to the link in the description of the video, and we're going to paste that into your browser here. It's a pastebin link, and this pastebin link is not the code, by the way, that you want to use in the paste here. It's actually the full text inside of the pastebin link. A lot of people got confused on that, so I want to make sure I showed you guys that. So go back to the pastebin link and double click the text, and then copy that, and then go back to the POE website, and then we're going to paste the text in here, and we're going to click save. And there you go, easy as that. Alright guys, that is all I got for this build. That should be everything you need to know about Skele Mages to have a fantastic and successful league start. Like I said in the beginning, this is one of the few builds out there that truly can do it all, from being a great mapper to being a strong boss killer. And on top of that, you can do it on a 1 to 2x budget all the way to and through in-game bosses. And then of course upgrade your gear until you get to that uber in-game boss or map content. Even 100% Delirious tier 16 maps are doable on this build. It's just crazy, and I'm so happy and surprised that it didn't get nerfed. There's no way it survives another league, so play it while it's hot. But yeah guys, that's all I got on this one. I hope you guys enjoyed the build, and if you do, let me know in the comments how it's going for you guys. See y'all in the next one.